Good evening, everybody. I am meteorologist Mike Linden coming at you live from the MyRadar studio here in Orlando, Florida. What an event that unfolded overnight last night, a relatively rare tornado outbreak throughout the Midwest, and we have assembled the MyRadar meteorology team as well as a special correspondent to break down what has happened, what the next steps are, and how this part of the country is going to recover. Of course, I am joined by MyRadar storm chaser Aaron Jajak, meteorologist Erica Lopez, as well as MyRadar special correspondent Juliet Kayyem, a professor in Homeland Security at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. Thank you very much all for joining us this afternoon. We begin, though, we're going to take a look at the MyRadar app here. I've got the power outages layer turned on, and it is just a big mess throughout the Midwestern United States. Roughly 295,000 customers still without power. And if we zoom in here on the border of Kentucky, Missouri, Arkansas, and Tennessee, the quad states there, you can really see the areas greatest impacted by this tornado outbreak overnight last night and into this morning. Truly a nightmare situation unfolding overnight under the cover of night. So we're going to start with meteorologist Erica Lopez to really break down what happened, how this event kind of happened, really, and what we can anticipate here as we take the next steps forward. Erica, thank you very much for joining us. So,
yeah, Mike.
Erica, what do we know right now with this event? For the people that live in that particular part of the United States, the worst is over.
Yes, and that's right. So the governor of Kentucky actually estimated at least 70 deaths. He is expecting even more to come in as NWS survey teams are there. Emergency managements are out there surveying this area, at least more than 200 miles long, this stretch from Arkansas to parts of Kentucky to even parts of Illinois. So this is a long track possible tornado that went through these areas, and NWS surveys are still ongoing as we speak. You can see this is from NWS Louisville, Kentucky. They're still surveying, especially out near the Bowling Green area, Hart County, Western Spencer County, and Ohio County. Right now in Bowling Green, they confirmed an EF3 tornado damage so far with wind speeds up to 150 miles per hour. Of course, these surveys are still ongoing. And according to the NWS in Paducah, Kentucky, they're still out there surveying the tornado damage that affected areas in Mayfield, Kentucky. That's one of the hardest hit areas from this particular storm system as of right now. So they're still out there surveying. This one will actually take a little bit more time just because the extent of the mileage from this specific event. So we'll definitely keep you updated on what's going on there. But I do want to talk a little bit about the climatology of December. A lot of people are saying this seems a little bit abnormal for this time of year, especially for the month of December. But from 1989 to 2003, the tornado average for the month of December nationwide is about 24 tornadoes. In this specific area, from the Paducah and Mayfield area, from 1995 to 2020, they averaged a total of 15 tornadoes in the month of December. And so far from this event, 6 have occurred, and this is just the beginning of this event. As more assessments roll through, they may confirm more tornadoes. So we're definitely gonna have to see what goes on in this area. But of course, assessments are still ongoing. And like I said, this storm tracked across at least 5 states, especially all the tornado reports that came in. Preliminary reports so far are about 35 tornado reports. And if we take a look at this radar imagery of what has happened over the past 24 hours, you can see how it just bright red boxes on the screen. Those are all tornado warnings. A lot of them were particularly dangerous situation tornado warnings, which means they're very dangerous storms that formed with this line of storms as it pushed through this area. And of course, a strong low pressure system was tracking over the state of Kansas and this towards the Great Lakes region. So on the backside of this, there was actually a lot of cold air producing some snow, but on the other side, a significant severe weather event that occurred yesterday afternoon into this overnight hours. And it was really interesting to see the setup of this because we were seeing registering dew point. That's the amount of moisture in the atmosphere at 60 degrees Fahrenheit, which is extremely rare for this time of year, especially in December. We also had a sufficient instability for this to support these severe thunderstorms, and this kind of setup overall really played a role in what we saw with this particular event. But at least now that this event has pushed through this area, looks like for recovery efforts for the next couple of days, they will see clear skies. It doesn't seem like there's going to be any active weather. The only issue they have to deal with is the cold air, especially overnight hours. If emergency managers are out in this cold air, they'll just have to keep that in mind. But overall, looks like at least the weather for now is in favor for those recovery efforts over the next couple of hours.
Thank you for that breakdown, Erica. Of course, I think people are really going to understand even more so after this event that tornadoes can occur at any time, really at any place. Even for people that live in Kentucky that maybe live in a hillier area or even in the mountains of eastern Kentucky where tornadoes have occurred as well. That, again, it doesn't necessarily have to occur in a place like Tornado Alley or along the Gulf Coast. These things can occur anytime and any place, as the people of the Bluegrass State learned last night. Thank you so much, Erica, for breaking things down for us. Before we get to MyRadar storm chaser Aaron Jack, we have a statement from the president and CEO of Flash, the Federal Alliance for Safe Homes, our partners in Resiliency. This is from the president and CEO, Leslie Chapman Henderson. The statement reads as follows. On behalf of the more than 100 organizations of the Flash Partnership, and with the most profound sadness, we are sending our heartfelt prayers and condolences to the families and communities who lost so much overnight in the tragic tornado outbreak. We pledge our unconditional support to the survivors to bring the engineering and science insights available to ensure that they recover resiliency once rebuilding begins. To that end, our academic and research partners are mobilizing today to perform remote and field analysis and capture the lessons from building performance in the path of the storms. In the meantime, we urge everyone to donate to the American Red Cross and the Kentucky Governor's Recovery Fund to meet the urgent needs for food and shelter during this devastating tragedy. And if you would like more information, you can go to Flash's website and, of course, tornadostrong.org. All right. So that is the statement there from Flash and from Leslie Chapman Henderson. Those folks are really the tip of the spear when it comes to building back stronger and really to keep you and yours safe from events like this. But now we're going to toss things over to MyRadar storm chaser Aaron Jack, who was on the ground yesterday as things developed. Aaron, this isn't typically a chase that we normally see. This occurred under the darkness of night. Things can look relatively frightening, and for yourself driving on the roadways and having to rely on radar, of course, your storm chasing experience, and then, of course, flashes of lightning to see this monster off in the distance.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the big problems with this time of year with these severe weather outbreaks is that you don't have much sunlight. The sun sets around 4:30 p.m., 5 p.m., and you're dealing with, normally in the summer or peak spring, when you're dealing with the severe weather, that is the prime time for severe storms of fire, but it's still plenty of daylight out, and it makes it a little easier for myself to be out there trying to alert the public, but also just for the public themselves. If they can see the storm, they take the situation a little bit more seriously. They can see the tornado. They know that they might have to get out of the way. And I was there on the ground. Erica was mentioning that the unseasonably, it was very warm in Memphis yesterday. I started the day off in Memphis, very warm. Blue sky, so it was just like a spring day, except for the things getting dark a little bit earlier than normal.
So what was the buzz like on the ground when you were in that area? Of course, you covered a lot of distance yesterday across Missouri, Tennessee, Kentucky, Arkansas. What was the buzz around the communities out ahead of this moderate risk day? Again, a 4 out of 5 from the Storm Prediction Center. It's almost as high as things go, and it's quite rare to see that occur in the month of December. What was the buzz on the ground?
Yeah, and one of the things too, in springtime, those storms are generally more in those severe weather prone areas where the public is very weather aware. And normally, say I'm in Oklahoma or Kansas, the public will be, I'll go to a coffee shop, let's say, before the chase, and frequently I hear the public talking about the storms that are coming, and they're well prepared for that. That wasn't necessarily the case here in the Tennessee area, Arkansas area. I didn't hear that buzz. Actually, you're talking about buzz, but I didn't really hear that buzz. I think people were probably aware that something was going on, but it isn't part of the culture of that region. So.
Oh, look at that.
Now, again, we touched on the fact that your normal chases occur where you're able to really see where you're going. What was it like as the sun set? I mean, of course, looking out ahead of things, we were likely anticipating this happening much later in the evening and through those overnight hours due to how unstable the atmosphere was. But what goes into your game planning when you're having to when you're dealing with not having the sun to guide you where to go?
Well, so one of the things, when you get into the southeast states here in the Midwest states, out of the Great Plains, you have to deal with trees. There's rivers to deal with. So generally, I'm trying to stay a little bit downstream of where I think those storms are going to form. That allows me to pay attention to radar and then be able to hone in, move in closely to the storm. And this was a long track storm. It's generally you see those long tracks in the southeast. And the storm initially fired way down by Little Rock. I mean, even southwest of Little Rock was where this storm, originally started trying to organize itself. And I was in the Jonesboro, Arkansas area, so that's where my chase pretty much started off. I was trying to maneuver myself, looking at the weather models earlier in the day, trying to maneuver myself to where I thought the best chance of these tornadoes forming. Where the National Weather Service really nailed it. They got the forecast perfect with their moderate risk. This storm tracked right through that moderate risk. So yeah, Jonesboro, Arkansas was right in that moderate risk area. So starting in that area, I moved down a little bit to the southwest as the storm approached me, and it just started to get tornado warned just to the southwest of Jonesboro, but not producing tornadoes yet. And once it got south or southeast of Jonesboro, that's when this thing really just got crazy and started producing one tornado after another, possibly just one single tornado all the way. There was likely one mesocyclone for that entire path. Looking at radar and watching that loop, it looked like it was your typical cyclic supercell where you have multiple mesocyclones and one hands off to another. This looked like one big mesocyclone that continued to march on through multiple states. At least 4 states that it traveled through, producing tornadoes all along the way. Likely one tornado. Okay. That is still to be determined by the National Weather Service in their survey.
Aaron, as usual, thank you so much for the work that you do. It's very valuable to have that ground truth. It's one thing to see it on radar, yet another thing to be out on the ground. Thank you so much again for everything that you do. All right, so now we're going to turn to what is next for the people of the Midwest, how we move forward from a disaster like this, where upwards of, at least as of right now, more than 70 people are dead. The governor of Kentucky, Andy Beshear, expects that total to rise potentially to above 100, which could very well make it the deadliest tornado outbreak in the history of the state of Kentucky. Again, here in the middle of December, folks, it is quite rare to have something like this occur here in the 12th month of the year. And for that, we bring in MyRadar special correspondent Juliette Kayyem, again, a professor in Homeland Security at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government and a CNN national security analyst. Juliette, I know that you're very busy. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us and to talk to us about this event.
Thanks for having me. It's well worth it, given what's going on. So thanks.
Of course. So you were on the ground covering the fires in Paradise, California for us, as well as the devastation of Hurricane Dorian. When it comes to what a disaster looks like, can you explain what something on this scale would look like on the ground for people that have never experienced something like this before? It's one thing to see pictures and video. It's another thing to be there.
I'm hoping you can hear me now. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good. I heard someone say unmute my mic. This looks, it's devastating. It's unique. It's going to look familiar. All disaster management begins at the local level. What we're seeing here is obviously a local capacity that's just completely overwhelmed, if not incapacitated at this stage. And so what's going to, what you're seeing now is Governor Beshear on the state side now driving resources to help the localities. And then you'll see FEMA. You've already heard from FEMA and the Secretary of Homeland Security try to coordinate additional federal resources that will be needed, which will be substantial because of just the breadth and depth of the devastation.
Why?
I don't know. It just went out in the middle of the area.
Response stage, so it's hard to think about what's after that. Our obligation is to make sure no one is still alive, to make sure that resources are driven to those in need. But honestly, by Tuesday or Wednesday, it will turn to a recovery mission at some stage. unfortunately, someone has to make the call that is unlikely to, that we are unlikely to find survivors with good weather, as described before. Which is good news, I guess. The recovery should be, I mean, excuse me, response capabilities should be able to move through the debris quickly, and then you'll move to what's called the recovery stage, which just looks very different. These are devastated communities that, but people will want to return home and rebuild their homes. There's no question about that.
Okay. Juliet, if you can hear me here, we lost all of our Skype audio going out over our feed. So if you can stand by here, I have no idea what happened. We lost it in the middle of Aaron there. So if you can just stand by here for a minute. We've got our graphics up. We're going to get that fixed. Stand by 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, we are good. We are good, Juliet. Apologies. Yes. Okay, so during your time with the Obama administration, you aided in, of course, the handling of some pretty large-scale disasters, of course, the H1N1 pandemic and the BP oil spill. Yeah. What's going on right now behind the scenes in all of these government offices? As you touched on, really, a lot of these offices are having to deal with this impact from this disaster. So what's going on behind the scenes?
Right. So it's more organized than it looks. And so people should know that. Essentially, once again, we start at the local level. What are the local needs? Those requests will be made to the state so that you don't have 100 jurisdictions calling the federal government. And the state, Kentucky in particular, will be making requests of FEMA for all federal assets so that you don't have a bunch of states calling a bunch of federal agencies. And FEMA sort of serves as a kind of a 1-800 number in many ways for federal government resources, in particular energy and electricity needs, the deployment of, unfortunately, of mass casualty tents and those kinds of services. So just think of anything that the federal government would have, and those requests would be going through FEMA at this stage. There's already likely, if not, I might have missed it in the last hour, a disaster declaration that's going to move money as well. And then you're going to see what's called mutual aid being activated. That will be other states are asked, these contracts are already formed. They will be asked by the states impacted to deploy resources, in particular, probably National Guard, to just help stabilize what's going to be a long-term recovery. So there is a process to this. It's horrible. It looks, you know, it's a disaster. It looks horrible. But over time, the ability to sort of organize what kind of assets are needed is pretty well organized. And then, you know, by Tuesday or Wednesday, those requests will change as people move into the recovery stage.
Now, you've spoken in the past about the 5 stages of crisis management.
Yeah.
As you touched on, this is a well-organized machine here from the point of inception to how things can begin to recover and build up for the potential next time something like this happens. Of course, resiliency. What are those 5 stages of crisis management, and where are we right now?
Okay, I should tell you, so think of a chain or think of a line, and in the middle is called the boom, at least in crisis management. And we don't really define the boom as anything. It could be a tornado, a hurricane, an earthquake, a fire, terror attack. So what we call the left of boom are those protection and prevention investments, those 2 stages that really try to protect people from when bad things happen. So as we've been hearing, tornado watches, sirens that go off, weather and meteorologists are helping all the time. Building codes that so should a tornado come through, people are protected. And then you have the boom. Unfortunately, this was a long one and a devastating one, a bunch of tornadoes. And right now we're in the response stage. We are still, the first responders are still looking for people who are still alive, and that is all that matters. Everything else can be delayed. We don't care about anything else right now. This is the response stage, but it will end, and by Tuesday or Wednesday there'll be a sort of more formal recovery. It's not search and rescue anymore. It really is a recovery stage. And the most important thing right now, and the priority that we always focus on, is housing. That's all that matters right now. People need to be in shelters. They need to get to long-term housing capacity. Students need to get to schools, or some way they get to schools. If you can stabilize housing, and which will be the focus, whether it's trailers, hotels, places nearby, family, friends. We saw this after Katrina. That will be the focus immediately. And then you worry about infrastructure, documentation, all the electricity, transportation, everything else can wait. Are there people still alive? And for those who survived, where will they reside for the days, weeks, and months to come?
Now, of course, as you just touched on there, this is not something that can be fixed immediately here. What's our timeline looking like to get back to, I guess, any kind of semblance of normal for the people that were impacted by this event?
So, I mean, looking just from above at the devastation, we are talking years. Here's what's going to happen. Money will be deployed. There'll be disaster declarations, and people will make choices. Some people, after a devastation like this, actually don't want to return. They will take disaster funding or insurance, depending on what they had, and go elsewhere. So those will be people that don't want to return, but others do. And if it's safe for them to do so, then you are talking, simply because it takes a while to remove debris and it takes even longer to find contractors and others who can build. You are talking months through the winter, and then certainly the spring and summer. So it happens faster than it might look. So that's good news. People get energized. We'll get laborers are probably already moving there. People are anxious to help, and that's always good. You'll get immigrant communities that often come to jurisdictions and then stay. So the areas will look different after this. This will have a permanent change for obvious reasons.
And finally, Juliet, what are the lessons learned following a disaster? We don't have to necessarily speak to this particularly, but from your expertise with disaster recovery as a whole, what are the lessons learned from a disaster in general for these people to keep with them in case something like this happens again?
Well, I'm really curious about what Aaron said about notification. I mean, if you gave me, what's the one thing that you would want in a disaster? You would want situational awareness. You would want warning. Tornadoes are horrible because, unlike hurricanes, they do not give much notice, but they give some notice. And so I'm really curious about
Thank you so much for joining us here this afternoon. We wish that you are staying safe and, of course, stay dry. We'll catch you back here in the next one. See ya.
Thank you.
Thanks.